Welcome to Total Money Management. We're back this week covering the weekly happenings between the 4th and the 8th of November.
Right.
You've just got the two beautiful gentlemen, Jacob and Steve, today.
Tom's got the arse.
Tom.
That's it.
Tom's out.
Bloody Trump voters. That's the end of them. We're getting rid of them. They're eating the dogs.
Tom's away.
They're going to be eating the dogs now. They're going to be eating a whole bloody lot of them.
Oh, mate, it's been absolutely wild the last 7 days for me.
Crazy.
Anyway, we're going to cover all the happenings. We've got a bit of a short topic on Donald Trump, things that have happened, some of the policies that he's talking about, as well as what we feel the future might hold for the US and the global economy. Then we'll cover the week that was and all of the cool stuff in there as well. So, Steve,
where the hell do you start?
Where do you want to start with Mr. Trump?
Well, I have to say personally, I was surprised. And there was a lot of people who said, Donald Trump will win. I didn't think he would, but I judged that on a couple of things. One was the campaign. She was really animated, and he seemed a bit low energy. But then when I went back and revisited it, the major complaint was that Kamala Harris was a lightweight in terms of policy. And she didn't really stand for much. And if she did, which I think we'll talk about, is this huge backlash against this identity politics. I was discussing it. I was watching it with my family members and were just like, oh, my God, Donald Trump's going to win.
I know.
And the thing that came across, which is for me, is really important and this has happened for the last probably 10, 15, 20 years on the left side of politics, right? So the people who generally like the Democrats or the Australian Labor Party or the Greens and stuff. And what there's been a tendency for the people on the left is to blame the voters and to say, and I saw this when I was in politics with Pauline Hanson. When Pauline Hanson, in 1998, when Beattie got elected,
She's been around that long.
Yeah. Mate, I've been around that long. Pauline Hanson got in, I think, 8 or 9, right? And it was an absolute shock. But my point being, a lot of those voters were basically low income in the regions, didn't have a tertiary level education, and that was really frowned upon by the left. And Kamala Harris was like that. If you look at what's happened is the parties have actually switched, and the GOP or Trump is now for the low working class, low education, service jobs, and Kamala Harris is for the inner city elites.
Yeah,
the tech bros who have got lots of dosh, that sort of stuff. And so Trump won. There were 7 swing states, and Trump won all of them.
Yeah. Well, I was. It's interesting. So I sat watching it with an American colleague from Cali, and she was saying to me, "Well, what the polls don't show is that Trump's voters." And this is generalizing and probably wrong to say on air, but Trump's voters, they don't have phones, they don't have internet, and it's all the polls aren't showing a true reflection of the type of voter for Trump. And they all come out on voting day.
Yeah. Well, it could be. But also the other thing I think happened, Jacob, is, and this is, again, my argument is you got to listen to the voters. You can't say, like a lot on the left have said, these people are dumb bastards and they're going to cop it because they're going to vote, they're going to vote for Trump. Well, they're going to get it. And it's like, mate, that's not the way it works. And so what I'm saying is, instead of the left politics like Kamala Harris going, you know what, maybe they don't like transgender politics. Maybe they don't want to talk about race. Maybe the Latinos don't give a shit that they're Latinos. They just want to get rich like every other American.
They just want to be treated equally like everyone else. Yeah.
It's the old argument, Jacob, is it's a class argument, right? Which is there's employers, that's the Republicans, and there's employees, that's the Democrats. But the point being, everybody wants to earn a good wage and have a standard of living. Black people don't go, women don't go, Kamala Harris is a woman, well, I'm voting for her. And it's like, why? Because she's a woman. It's like, well, no, people will say, okay, well, who's going to make me wealthier? And if they think it's Trump, they can be wrong, but that's not the point. The point is saying they think Donald Trump's going to make them wealthier. And if that's the case, they're going to vote for Donald Trump rather than say, I'm a woman, sorry, I'd rather remain poor and vote for Kamala Harris. It's like, well, that's not the way it works.
Well, there's a couple of core things, right? People want a better standard of living. They want healthcare that's equal healthcare rights to everyone. So if you drop dead and have a heart attack in the middle of the street, you're going to get some help. And they want better education for their kids. Like there's the 80% rule that I think we often deviate from and split from in politics, where we start to bring the race cards up and we start to bring the gender politics up, which splits people.
Everybody's looking at it through that prism. And, like they say, the Muslims voted more for Donald Trump. Women voted more for Trump, blah, blah. And I'm looking at it going, they're missing the whole point. The whole point is, my argument is, look at their incomes. Who's voting for Donald Trump? Is it rich people or poor people? Oh, it's a mix of both. Okay, why are poor people voting for Donald Trump? Because he's offering them a better perspective on life by saying, we're going to fix the bloated government bureaucracy, right? We're going to put away illegal immigrants. We're going to deport them, right? Now, people will look at that, and again, there was a lot of people who were saying, the Latinos are going to go Burko over that. Now, I saw an interview, and I admit it's only one, but a Latino family who'd come to America 40 years ago under Reagan. They were illegals. They then got citizenship under Reagan. They both worked jobs. They've got a house in Arizona. They've got the kids and all that sort of stuff. And the guy said, who are you voting for? And they said, we're going to vote for Donald Trump. And the guy was like, dude, Latinos, they're going to deport him. Now, she said, look, we know some people who are illegal Latinos as our friends. And she said, but, they're not doing anything bad. Right? And I was going, that's not the criteria, darling. The criteria is they're illegal, right? They don't pick out the goodies and the baddies. They're just going to deport a lot of them. So, but my point being, that's the way people are thinking. So it's the same with when you look at Trump's tax changes, the wealthy are going to get wealthier. But the poor people still voted for Donald Trump, right?
Well, they're changing, from 20 to 15% or something?
21 to 15.
Yeah.
So in corporate tax cuts.
Yeah.
Right? So, but again, we've got to the position where I don't mind if you make an extra $1,000 a week and you're really rich, so long as I get an extra $150 a week. So do you know what I mean? Instead of saying, well, hang on, Jacob shall only get 150 and I should get 600, right? To make it more equal. That's not the way it works a lot in America. In America, it's much more about, work hard, invent some widget and you get rich. Cool. That's cool. That's what America's all about, right? The freedom, all that sort of stuff. And that's where Trump was really effective in saying, I'm going to get rid of all the government bureaucracy, right? He's got Elon Musk on board to do the,
Department of Government and whatever it is.
God help us. Yeah.
Have you seen that?
The Department of Government Efficiency. Jesus. But
those two can't get along in the best of times anyway.
Well, remember there was a tweet that Trump sent out which had Trump at the desk as president and Elon Musk standing beside him, and Trump basically going, this bloke should be down on his knees to me, i.e., because, they're all sucking up to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now Elon Musk thinks he's a goddamn president.
Yeah.
Trump has just said this week, I can't get rid of him out of Mar-a-Lago. Right? So Musk is running around thinking he's the president of the United States. This is going to end badly, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
Because one thing we do know is on the extreme right or the far right and on the far left, they usually implode. Right? So there'll be a shit fight between Elon Musk, Donald Trump, RFK, all of these supporters, because they're all a little bit loopy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same thing I can tell you that happened in 98 with Pauline Hanson's crew, right? They were a rag bag of, people who were a bit nutty and had some really wild ideas, right? Mainly really libertarian, and anti-immigration, right? So it tells you how long this has been going on. But within 6 or 12 months, they'd all imploded, and they'd left Pauline Hanson. They were running as independents. One bloke didn't wear shoes. It was just wild. And that's what's been going on the far right. The same thing happened with Jackie Lambie Network, right? She had a couple of people join, and then they went, Jackie's a nutcase or whatever. Then they leave, and this is generally what happens. So it'll be interesting to see how the selections for, like RFK, right, in health. And he's an anti-vaxxer. His argument is, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I just think people should be fully informed. Now, part of the problem with that is in Samoa, 82 children died from measles because of RFK's, carrying on about anti-vaccines, right? So this is where it starts to get really, really dangerous. Now, I'm not saying that, Nestle is a world of good in the food sector, but what we're doing is we're going from the sublime to the ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It's like, RFK is going to fix health. Okay, well, that's going to be really ugly, right? Because he's got big pharma, he's got big food. I mean, these dudes are serious. Right.
Well, they've got big priorities as well. Like yeah. It's not as if they've come from nothing and now they're all for the people.
Absolutely.
They've got shareholders and investors to keep happy.
Yep, and
which is the scary thing to me.
Well, that can that'll tank a market pretty quickly. But I think the general vibe, I think, also on the left, and for people who voted for Trump, one of the things I notice is a lot of people go, I don't think it'll be that bad. 60% tariffs on China, I don't think he'll do that. It's like, okay, but what if he does? Yeah. And the thing that I think this time around is the Trump camp is a lot more organised. They'll have a lot more experience about how to run government because they were there for 4 years last time. I think the Wall Street and investors will be fairly surprised because you've got to remember Trump's a real estate guy, right? He's not a stocks guy.
No, yeah.
And there's a lot of people in Wall Street going, yeah, Donald Trump, yeah. And I sort of look at it, their idea is, no, he's not going to do any of that stuff. He won't put big tariffs on China. He's just used it as a negotiating tool. And my argument is, guys, this is about national security. It's not about bluffing economics. It's or saying to China, oh, we want your investment, right? They are dealing with the Chinese Communist Party in a national security setting. It's got nothing to do with economics, right? So to give you an example, Biden this week just said no more chips to China from TSMC, which are the latest cutting edge, right?
And they're not Dorito corn chips.
Yeah, sorry. We're talking about semiconductor chips, right? 2 nanometers. Yeah. So in other words, everything that's cutting edge, cars, military technology, all needs these, extreme chips.
Yep.
Well, if China can't get them, they're in real strife. Now, Biden has just come out and said, right, they're not getting them, right? TSMC has said, we're not taking any orders from China. So this is where you start to get the pointy end, which is our argument, which is economists are failing to understand that it's not about how do we just negotiate to get, cheaper cars. It's about national security. And that's the way the Chinese are looking at it.
Yeah. Well, right? on the tariffs piece, I think there's a misconception on what tariffs actually are, right? Because it's the people in the country. So that if we tariff China 60%, in Australia, we're actually the ones paying for it.
Yeah, well, the price goes up.
Yeah. So which in theory creates a supply and demand. In theory, you won't buy that one, you'll buy an Australian-made one.
Yeah.
But then you got to pay the Australians more money to make that in the first place.
Yes, and it leads to inflation.
And that leads to inflation, and that's where the cycle goes on. It's not China paying an extra 60% on things.
No.
Which I want to make clear, because it's actually... Most people would assume, Trump's putting a 60% tariff on X, Y, and Z in China, which means that's going up by 60%, and that's not the case.
No. Trump said, and it was quite clever, but incorrect, Trump said the Chinese will pay for the tariff. Now, there is a long convoluted argument that they may do, but it involves currencies, exchange rates. So, for example, let's dig a little deeper. It's essentially saying, Jacob, you buy that T-shirt from China for $10 and you sell it in Australia for $25. Okay, well, now there's a tariff on it. That's going to cost you $15. So you either reduce your profit margin and still sell it at $25, right? If you're in a competitive market where I can go, all right, well, I'll just get T-shirts from Bangladesh, right? And they'll be cheaper. Okay, that's one option. The other alternative is, though, if you said, Steve, I'm the only one that makes white T-shirts in the world and they come from China, you're going to raise your price to $30, right, to keep your profits. Now, the government gets more money in taxes, right? But the consumer says, okay, well, Jacob's $25 T-shirt is now worth $30, right? Now, there's a couple of things that can happen. China can say, okay, Trump's put let's argue, a 10% tariff on it. Okay, we're going to drop our exchange rate 10%. So therefore it negates the impact of the tariff. That's what happened last time Trump was in. So when Trump put tariffs on, the exchange rate went down. So in other words, the 20% tariff was 25, I think, roughly became about 17. And what happened was the Chinese pulled the exchange rate down, so it didn't make much difference. Now, there's a lot of people saying, oh, well, they'll just do the same thing. Well, yeah, but the tariffs this time are like 60%.
On a 60% tariff, you're gonna tank the whole.
Well, I think you'll find, maybe the Trump camp went, hey, listen, it's got to be a baseball bat, not a matchstick. So there's that aspect of it. And it depends on industries, who gets what they call as a carve out, who gets exempt, all this sort of stuff. So it's going to be a really long, complex arrangement, and it will depend on, okay, well, how does Europe respond? How does Australia respond? Right? Because Trump said he'd have a 10% tariff on everything. Okay, well, that's Australia. Now, we're probably all right because we run a trade deficit with America. So Trump's cool with the deficit. He's not cool with the surpluses, which is China, Germany, all of those Southeast Asian nations who, as we've been talking about, have been saying, we don't want American goods, but we'll export all our stuff to you. So eventually the Americans have run the line and said, okay, that's going to stop. Right, you guys have got to reform your economies. And now that's where the rubber hits the road, because now Trump is saying, I'm going to make sure that happens. Right, and so those countries, and this is why I say it's important, because when you understand the way the system works, China's got massive overproduction, right? But they've got, you imagine if you said to the Chinese, okay, we're gonna sack 80 million people because of the tariffs. It would, the Chinese Communist government would just go, holy Lord, this is what we don't need. So that's what I'm saying. This is where we've got a real problem, right? Because the Chinese Communist Party are not really interested in, Xi doesn't really care that much about the stock market. He wants to make sure there's no social disorder. Right, and that's the number one priority. The number one priority for all communist or autocratic regimes is social stability. Yeah,
right. And when they're running an export, the whole point of China is to continue exporting goods. They don't want to break that.
Well, they're trying to, but half-heartedly. But it's really, really difficult because, as we're going to talk about in the masterclass coming up, you've got rich people in all of these countries who don't want it to change, right? And it's really hard because rich people in all these countries are funding or lobbying or having excessive influence on governments, right? And that's what's been going on in America, right? All the tech bros, all the pharma bros are saying, don't reform healthcare because they're all making loads of money. Right, they don't give a toss about the American public. And that's what, when you then go up and try and change that, that's when you get these backlashes. And the problem with people like Musk is they run campaigns on Twitter or on X as it's called now, right, against the government. So this is where it becomes really difficult about, and this is why Albanese is talking about misinformation.
Yeah, well, where do you look for your information now? Because you've got opinions or you've got people paying for it.
Well, that's the thing. I will tell you, it goes all the way back to Ronald Reagan, right? Most people don't know this because they're too young, but there was a thing in America called the Fairness Doctrine, right? And what it was way back in about the 1920s or something. What it basically said was that they had the newspapers, right? And one businessman got the shits about something, and so he started paying to put all these ads in the newspaper, right? And the government said, hang on, dude, that's not a balanced reporting. It's just from your point of view. So they created the thing called the Balance Doctrine. I think it's the Fairness Doctrine, the Balance Doctrine, Fairness Doctrine, I think. And essentially what it said was you have to have here's one argument, here's the opposing argument, you make up your mind.
Yeah.
Reagan got rid of that.
Okay.
It was a huge move, right? Reagan said, no, don't need that anymore. And that's where we got Fox News, Sky News in Australia, all these media things that are just either pro-Democrat or pro-Republican. Yeah. And, of course, lots of people suffer from confirmation bias. So who wants to listen to Fox News if you're a Democrat?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, a lot of it stems all the way back from like wartime in the army, propaganda.
Absolutely.
Like everything comes from even intelligence.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, and that's where the tricks are because, the Russians are putting out propaganda into America. Americans are doing the same. So that's where it becomes really tricky. So, it's just going to be, some of the stuff this week we've seen with Trump putting people like Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General, right? And just to give you an idea, Matt Gaetz is being investigated for sleeping with a minor.
Right.
Right? This is the guy.
Let's put him in charge of something, hey?
Let's put him in charge of the laws, right? So this is a guy that's got a history where people have just gone, WTF, this guy is bad.
Yeah.
And on an objective basis, even a heap of the Republicans have gone, Donald, Jesus, do you know what you're getting yourself in for? This guy's a lunatic, right? But he's also a bad person. He's put Tulsi Gabbard, who they believe is a Russian asset, in charge of the CIA. National Intelligence, right? Like he's put RFK, who's, a bit of a nutter on food, in charge of the health department.
Yeah. And then there's Musk.
Mate. And then there's Musk and, Victor Ramaswamy, I think his name is. Like you just look at it and go, what the hell? And that's why I'm saying there's a lot of people who I think are like, don't worry about it. It'll be, they're not going to do what they say they're going to do. And I'm saying, dude, have you seen who he's picked?
These are a bunch of narcissists.
These people are, these people have got an agenda. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but what I'm saying is stop thinking Donald Trump's not in here to change the way America works.
Well, the people that he's chosen have track records of significant change.
Absolutely.
So that's what they're good at.
But also their ideas are a bit like, okay.
Out there.
Well, like RFK. It's admirable to get rid of, big pharma and big food. I get that and I support that. But when he's got some ideas where you just go, this is, if they come into winter and COVID's still going, which it is, and he's an anti-vaxxer, mate, I can tell you there's going to be a lot of strife go on, right? Because, it's just, there's a lot of those people, as you were saying before, who don't have a phone or don't get information off the internet, right? And it's, that's where the anti-vaxxers work religiously in those areas to stop people getting vaccinated, right? And that's why I brought up the thing about Samoa, right? With 83 children dying of measles because of RFK. So, now multiply that by a big number in the United States. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what I'm saying is there's a potential for that.
Yeah, because
they
have a lot of influence.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one big area.
That's good. Well, let's get on to the week that was then and talk about Bitcoin for a minute. Give me a bit of a...
Oh, mate, thanks for coming. Thanks, folks. See ya.
Oh, no, it's been good. But no matter how well Bitcoin's been doing, it's still at its all-time high. So the cape's at 38 at the minute, which we'll talk about next week anyway.
Yep.
Bitcoin's at an all-time high. We've got inflation over 41 days increasing year on year by at least 3%, which again we'll talk about next week as well. We say this a lot, but I think the message that I want to get across is just if you've made a bit of profit in Bitcoin or anything, just what's your strategy? Take some off the table, rebalance a little bit. I've had an absolute nutter of a run over the last month or so in cryptocurrency, but I'm not sat there going, this is going to go up forever.
Yeah, I'm going to double again from here.
So, but saying that, it's been great.
Buy and hold, folks.
Steve messaged me last night going, "Oh, well, one's done well. Nice little like 1.5%." I was like, "That's cute. I've just done 30% in a week."
Right, that's enough. But you're right. But and in all seriousness, I'm just starting to get really concerned about everything.
Yeah.
Right, everything's at an all-time high. And look, in all seriousness, what you're saying there is an accurate reflection on what's going on out there. Man, I'm making 30%. I'm going to go and buy myself a Jeep, right? It's like, okay. And so...
A jet, you mean?
Well, a Jeep or a jet, yeah. Why aim small? Yeah. But as I said, in all seriousness, the stock market's taken off. Yeah. Bitcoin's taken off. Gold's had a bit of a breather, but it's had a great run. Everything's just crazy. And it may continue on, but that's where I think, 2025 will be pretty hairy with Trump taking office, the tariffs, there's so much stuff I'm looking at going, man, the volatility will be crazy. Yeah. If things, if people have to, the thing that changes markets is the unexpected event. Now, there's two ways to do that. One is to say, holy dooly, we had a volcano. Tokyo had an earthquake, right? And the markets go crazy. The second one is, which I think is more likely, is, holy shit, Donald Trump's actually doing some really, really way out stuff. That's an unexpected event. And that's why I say, because people are sort of like, I don't think they'll be that bad. Yeah. I'm looking at it going, have you seen the people he's put in these pots, guys?
Yeah. So we're looking for behavioural changes now in markets, not necessarily price changes.
Well, yeah. Behavioural changes have always been the key, but the other thing is too, it doesn't roll over in a day, but you get a change of narrative, and that's where I think we could be in for a big surprise next year when we go, actually Donald Trump's followed through on the 60%, and in fact China's now said, okay, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to stop XYZ exports, or Europe goes on fire. Ukraine-Russia turns out to be a really bad negotiation. Israel is now, bombing the crapper out of Lebanon, and, they had an attack plan for Iran, right? There's a lot of stuff you're looking at going, man, oh man, there's a lot of bushfires. I don't know how they keep all of these under control. If the Cape was at 10, I'd be going, nah, don't worry about it, dude. Yeah. But a Cape of 38, Bitcoin an all-time high, gold, everything rocketing, you're just looking at it going, it's what they call metastability, right? And what it is, it's like saying a match doesn't, you pick up a match and you go, yep, but just strike it once and you got a fire, right? Or a pencil spinning, right? Not a pencil laying flat, but a pencil spinning on its head. One of the slightest little touches and it gets the wobbles and it falls over, right? That's where we are. We're at that metastability point where everything is just so finely balanced, and it won't take much for, we've got a lot of debt, markets are going crazy. We've got people doing, 0-day options, like everyone's speculating and gambling and all this sort of stuff. And I just look at it and go, it's now going to be really rocky because Trump's there and it's going to change a lot.
Well, the last time was 2008 when it was the same irrational exuberance.
Yeah.
The next minute, bang.
Yep.
the whole thing came down. Let's bring it back on shore. So over here we've got Governor Michelle Bullock saying that the central bank's not changed its outlook on inflation yet, so we're expecting inflation to continue.
Yeah. The argument was 12 or 18 months ago, again, there was a lot of property people, a lot of economists going, don't worry about it, rates will fall again, right? Well, Michelle Bullock is basically saying now they return to the target band in 2026. So if you're sitting here in 2024 going, oh, man, I got another 18 months of this mortgage being really high, that's a problem. Now, there are some arguments from property people and interest rate people to say the economy tanks and interest rates get cut. Okay, fair enough. But my argument is, okay, that means the economy's in recession and we're going to lose jobs, and some people who've got a mortgage might, the good news is, Jacob, you're not paying 6 anymore, you're paying 4. But the problem is, Jacob, you lost your job.
Yeah, you did.
It's a bit like, okay, I would have preferred, struggling paying 6.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, moving on.
Moving on. That's just after Trump won.
Well, I've got but the Berkshire Hathaway cash pile here. We talked about, if you guys are interested, we've got 3 or 4 blogs now actually on
the last
the
4
website.
blogs,
which covers an extensive paper from Buffett and as well as Steve's insights into it as well, and it's a really good read if you're interested, just on the website. But what we are seeing now, obviously, Berkshire Hathaway's cash pile's grown, but for people inquiring even to us, they say, I've got all this cash, what do I do with it? What do I deploy?
Yep.
There's no issue having cash.
Yeah, well, you're getting 4 or 4.5.
Yeah.
That's better than minus 35.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the person with arguably the most experience in investing in the world is sitting in cash,
33% cash,
then you look at that and go, okay, if I don't have as much experience as that, what am I doing not sitting in cash?
Absolutely. If you went and had a one-on-one and someone said to you, mate, you're going to talk to one of the world's greatest investors who have compounded 20% for 60 years, and he said, man, oh man, I've got a lot of cash at the moment. And you went, oh, that's interesting. What does that mean? It means the stock market's really expensive. Do you really think you'd go, oh, cool, I'm going to go 80% into stocks, right? You'd be going, man, that old bugger must know something that I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, I think I said to you at the start, you've got to pay attention when people like Buffett have got sells down Apple and Bank of America, not just to rebalance, right? Not going, I'll just take off a 10 billion off the top,
Just a cool 10 bill.
Yeah. You look at that and go, he's selling a lot. And that has to be a real ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. And Buffett, the same as everyone, has learned really hard lessons. He's left... He should have sold companies before, and he's openly said that.
With Coca-Cola.
With Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So now he's going, okay, I've been around this merry-go-round before.
Yep.
I'm going to get ahead of the curve. I won't make the extra 5 or 10%, but I'll save a hell of a lot.
Well, I think, Jacob, what it points out is what the thing we've been saying, which is, listen, the Cape's at 38 or 39. This is really, really dangerous territory, right? And Buffett's looking at it going, man, I got all that profit. I'm 94, right? So if I cark it and this thing drops like a rock, people are going to look at Warren Buffett and go, yeah, that stupid old bugger, he lost 500 billion after he died or something. So I reckon it's part of that too, is a legacy thing. And again, if you look at his market timing, it's pretty good.
Oh, it's impeccable. Right? Well, he's got all the experience, but he also knows people in the industry as well.
Mate, he's seen it all before, right? He's seen it all before. You've got to say that's worth something.
Yeah.
Right?
And if people have got questions about it, please feel free to reach out. Because it's been a big talking point. Monetary policy. Are we trying to put the listeners to sleep, mate?
I just wanted to sort of point out to people that I've read 64 goddamn pages. I don't know how they can write so many pages every 3 months.
On monetary policy.
On, the state of the economy and monetary policy. It's like, dude, it hasn't changed that much.
Yeah.
I mean, the next one will be a bit of a doozy with Donald Trump. It'll be interesting to see how they all, put that in. But anyway, just simply saying, look, folks, if you want to go and, if you suffer from insomnia, I recommend you read the statement on monetary policy.
Well, the short version is rates aren't going to be coming down.
Yeah.
So, and then you can get on with it.
Yeah. End of story.
We'll save you a couple hours. Wednesday, we've got mortgage repayments on median house as a proportion of average full-time earnings.
Yep. Just again, stuff we've been saying.
Property's expensive.
Property's expensive in relation to income. And if you have to ask yourself why property prices keep rising if income isn't.
Yeah.
That's what they call speculation.
Yeah. And we have another property special coming up, in
A
the
couple
next
of weeks
few
or something. Yeah.
Where we'll delve a little bit further into some of that.
Yep.
Thursday, we've obviously got Trump, who's in, and we've just talked about.
Next.
And then Friday,
Tough Christmas.
Yes.
We all know that one. Next. Distressed listings are rising, just a bit of an indicator.
What does that mean? So people selling because they can't pay the mortgage?
Yeah, well, they're under duress.
Yeah, well, we've covered a few.
And it might be the bank saying, "Dude, where's the payment? Righto, we're going to, mortgage you in possession." Or,
yeah. Well, we've shown a couple of times now where the charts of household savings are declining.
Yes,
and obviously mortgage repayments are staying the same.
Yes.
So we're going to get to
ipso facto problemo.
Yeah, bit of a crossover point there. So where's the worst? WA. No, that's just because they've gone down 18%. Hey.
The year-on-year change is Tasmania, 23. So,
Jesus.
Next.
Short story.
Yeah, just, again, Magnificent Seven's out of control.
Yeah, there was a question on the socials basically saying it's the top 8. Top 8 companies are propping up the S&P. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. A lot of the gains in the S&P have been from a couple of things. One is, more recently, is the Magnificent Seven. Before that, there was a lot of stock buybacks, right? So there's that as well. So just what we were talking about before too, Jeff Bezos has been selling big lumps of Amazon stock, right? So again, you look at it and go, there's all these people selling their stock.
The NVIDIA CEO sold bucket loads of it as well.
Well, why wouldn't you? $3 trillion. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, next.
Per capita income. Consumer spending.
Just the same thing. Same thing.
And then Australia recorded 98,375 new vehicle sales.
Yeah, which is a bit of a surprise. But anyway, tradies, get in there, lads. Get those bloody Rams and what are those other monster tanks that I absolutely...
Big Chevys.
Ah, Jesus, I hate those things. Probably just lost half the client base.
No, half the client base.
Every bloke under 40 is just going, yeah, right, switch that podcast off.
And then finally, we've got the chart of the week, which is showing 51.4% of consumers expect to see higher stock prices over the next 12 months, the most in history. Ding, 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 ding,
ding, ding, ding, ding, ding, ding, ding.
Top signal.
Yep, and it is that simple, right? Yes. And if we look at the slide of the week, what I just want to point out to people there is, I think we're pretty close to the top, folks. And so, as Jacob and I were talking about before with behaviour, you've really got to start looking at, stocks at an all-time high, biggest part of people's portfolios, irrational exuberance in tech stocks. The narrative is AI.
Yep.
And I'm going to do a paper soon, or Jacob, we're going to do a podcast soon on this sort of stuff, because it's really important that people understand how the market moves.
Market cycle.
Yeah.
So would you say we're in this excitement and invincible stage at the minute, or are we going through to complacency?
I think we're close to it. I think we're closer on the upside to feeling invincible.
Yeah.
I think we've got a melt up coming, where everybody just, hits the punch bowl. And that could be, again, a Donald Trump thing, right? And it could be America goes, Trump is great, corporate tax cuts, blah, blah, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
That could last for X amount of time.
Absolutely.
And no one knows.
The one thing that, and this is, just me, February is often a down month in the year. So, if February goes down, it might get a bit of a roll on, like, oh my God, Donald Trump's a disaster. Like the narrative changes.
The stars align, yeah.
Yeah, and then suddenly March and April and chaos breaks loose and, away we go.
So it's important in these sections, excitement, invincible, complacency stages, where, the invincible makes you complacent and you have a bit of a down
Yeah.
a down few months, and you go, whatever. It's going to
Buy the
bounce.
dip.
Yeah. So these points particularly, it's important to have a good asset allocation strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to your point before, watch people's behavior. What is the market doing? Not just what's the price doing.
When there's a lot of people saying it's all good, it can't go down, you're a dickhead, as I often get called on the socials for talking about market
That's
cycles.
just what I say to you, mate.
And that's just my family. That's when you you get these stories the last few years, Warren Buffett's a silly old bastard, and, Elon Musk is a genius and he's going to do everything, That's when you get a halo effect. Right, which is, the halo above their head where, they can't do anything wrong, it's all fantastic. That's when you start to go, hang on, things are getting a little bit out of control here. Yeah. And again, it's just the way history works. Anyway, we've rabbited long enough.
We'll wrap that up, mate. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, folks.
As always, remember, we don't provide financial advice.